We have researched players who could potentially break out in their second year in the NFL for fantasy purposes, and so we're going to give them to you in this video. Before we start, do us a huge favor. Drop a like and subscribe if you play fantasy football. Again, we've got a whole team of research people working towards making our channel very in-depth and analytical as we go into this fantasy season to help you win your league, help you win your draft. Let's talk about Zay Flowers of the Baltimore Ravens. Zay Flowers is a guy that I think a lot of people are overlooking what he did in year one, because year one for Zay Flowers, yes, it was slightly underwhelming compared to, I guess, somebody like a Puka Nacua, right? I mean, it's kind of hard when you're going against that as your comparison, but he still had 108 targets in his first year, right? He was still a wide receiver 3 in fantasy football. And so, yeah, a lot of Zay Flowers' thing is for him to take this next step, he's going to need to get more targets and convert on more of his targets. He only had 77 receptions on 108 targets last year, so he's definitely going to need to take that number up a notch. However, I think there's pretty good opportunity in the Baltimore Ravens offense for Zay Flowers to take this next step. When you're looking at the target share last year in that offense, 21.8% was Zay Flowers' target share as a rookie. That's pretty good. That's like wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 range, as you saw, and he fell firmly in that category. And so now the question is, can Zay Flowers take the next step and become somebody who has high-end wide receiver 2 to wide receiver 1 upside? And it's going to depend, because off the top of my head, I wouldn't say Zay Flowers is somebody that has the upside to do that. But when you're looking at the target share on that offense, 13% of it went to Odell Beckham Jr. Yes, that Odell Beckham Jr. 12.5 to Mark Andrews, which one important point to be made is that Mark Andrews' target share next year will go up because he's going to be healthy for an entire season, supposedly. And if he is, he goes up to probably 16-17% minimum. And Rashad Bateman had 11.5%. But when you're looking at the non-fantasy relevant players in that offense, they soaked up 41.5% of the targets in that offense, meaning a couple things. If Zay Flowers naturally were to take the next step forward as a receiver and as an NFL player, there's plenty of opportunity in that Ravens offense for him to get more of that target share. And what we see, and the point we're going to make throughout the entire video, is that target share is not necessarily based on the opportunity in an offense. It's going to follow player by player. A player is going to dictate how much targets they get because it's usually skill-based. It's talent-based. The best... Yeah, we use the term earn targets a lot. And so the best wide receivers are going to earn targets. So it's just a matter of whether Zay Flowers can do that. And right now, Zay Flowers is a guy, again, when you're looking at his rookie year and his target, Zay Flowers in his rookie year was somebody who had 108 targets. So in that 100 target club as a rookie, which is a very good club to be in. And in this research, our guy Chip here, he notes that usually 20 to 24% is a team leader. He's a low-end wide receiver 1 or high-end wide receiver 2. And with Zay Flowers to have that target share and still only be the wide receiver 31 in PPR leagues last year, you have to wonder if that's going to end up turning into more production. Like I said, it's a combination of a couple things from last year. Again, one of the big ones was that he only had 77 receptions on that. He only had 850 yards on that. He only had 5 touchdowns on that. So although the targets were there, again, for Zay Flowers, it's turning some more of those targets into receptions and then doing more with those receptions. And so that's definitely something that can come with another year in the league, with another year under his belt. And so naturally, you have to wonder in that offense, is Zay Flowers going to take the next step as a receiver?
Yeah, and that's what I would anticipate. I mean, when you're looking at his game log alone, most of his 4 of his 5 touchdowns came in the last 6 to 7 weeks of the year. And when you're looking at, him starting as an inexperienced rookie with the team at the beginning of the season, right? How often is he going to be trusted in the most pivotal parts of the game in the red zone? Not as often as he was towards the end of the season. And honestly, the Mark Andrews injury really helped accelerate the trust that Lamar Jackson had to have in him. And he was very pivotal in the competition against Kansas City in the AFC Championship game where, he ended up fumbling at the goal line, but he was getting those opportunities, getting those chances. And I expect that to happen more and more going into his second season. With more experience is going to come more opportunity. And in the target share, with it already being there, it begs the question, like you said, is he going to continue to be a production outlier where he's going to be producing less than you'd expect based on the target share? Or will that fantasy production meet what his opportunity already is in that offense? And that's probably what I'd put my money on. And the reason I'm so excited to put my money on it is because of his price right now.
Yeah.
His ADP, according to ESPN right now, is 51 overall, going around George Kittle, Trey McBride, a handful of tight ends there. Aaron Jones, who, really, what are we... I like Aaron Jones. I'm definitely worried just about him. And I mean, durability alone. And the guys going in front of him, Evan Ingram, another tight end, Jalen Waddle, a wide receiver 2 in his own offense who had less target share and almost as many he had just a little more targets than Zay Flowers had as a wide receiver 1 in Baltimore. So it's interesting. Cooper Kupp, again, another wide receiver 2. Devonta Smith, a wide receiver 2.
Yes.
If you're shooting for upside and you're shooting for ceiling in fantasy, which that's how you win your leagues, that's how you win championships and win money, you should be taking your shot on Zay Flowers in this range.
And again, Zay Flowers has to be more efficient going into next year. He has to take the next step with turning those targets into fantasy points. Yeah. But again, you're talking about taking a shot on the guy in the 5th round. He's the wide receiver 1 on his team, and he's going around wide receiver 2s. I think it's good enough to take Zay Flowers. I'd take a shot on him in a lot of my fantasy drafts this year. So
yeah, another guy that we're going to talk about in this video that I think is a little bit more controversial, and he definitely has a lot more competition to deal with than Zay Flowers does, is Jaxon Smith-Njigba. And look, JSN's price compared to Zay Flowers, I mean, he's half the price. Literally half the price. I'm trying to find where he's even going.
It's like 8th, 9th round.
That's nuts. 112th overall, going around some of the best defenses like the Jets right now. Keon Coleman, an unproven rookie. Xavier Worthy, an unproven rookie. Marquise Brown, a deep threat. Ladd McConkey, unproven rookie. Tyler Lockett, a teammate of JSN who had granted 20% target share last year. But an interesting finding that we had, and this is really what inspired the video, was does JSN actually have a route to be not just a fantasy relevant, but a very hyper-productive wide receiver going into his 2nd year? And we kind of landed on, yeah, it's absolutely possible. The fact that Jaxon Smith-Njigba was able to take a 16% target share in an offense where DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett both took 20 apiece is nuts. It's crazy. You don't see that. The only other time you see among those top 3 to 4 assets having like really well spread out target share is the San Francisco 49ers, where none of them even reach 20%. They're all in like the 16 to 18% range. JSN was able to manage the 16% target share with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. The interesting thing here is Tyler Lockett specifically, and that really was the tough thing seeing this offseason was Tyler Lockett re-signing with Seattle, because we were expecting a bigger jump for JSN, and granted his price would be a lot more expensive than it is right now because of the Tyler Lockett re-signing. One interesting thing to note about Tyler Lockett last year compared to 2022 is he had almost the same amount of opportunity, but he was less productive overall due to less touchdowns, getting less yardage with every single reception that he had. And he, with his targets, wasn't hauling in as many as he was previously in previous seasons. So it definitely is notable with Tyler Lockett that it seems we're starting to see a downward trend. And with him being on the wrong side of 30, you're kind of optimistic that JSN is going to be able to usurp him this year. And I think that's what we're counting on, because we know we know for a fact that DK Metcalf, after 5-6 years in the league, he's going to get his 20%. And he's just going to stay there. He's going to get you about 1,100 yards and 7 or 8 touchdowns. You can do the math if you don't trust us. Go look at it. That's what he's going to get you.
It always averages out to about that, which is great. Consistency is great. Mm-hmm. And he's also a very high floor pick. But JSN is a guy that has a pretty high ceiling. And when you're being able to get 93 targets, being able to lead the team in target separation and things like that, it points to JSN. I mean, JSN was a very good prospect that I think a lot of people are just kind of dismissing at some point because he didn't produce at a 20+% target share rate his freshman year. But can he take the jump?
Exactly. And here's my question to that kind of thought is JSN, is it reasonable to think that JSN at 16% and Lockett at 20% this year will flip?
I don't think that's unreasonable at all.
Is that unreasonable? No. Okay. And once JSN is at that 20% target share, at least you're looking at him in that range of 20 to 24%, which is what a high-end wide receiver 2 or even a low-end wide receiver 1. I think a low-end wide receiver 1 is rich. I would count on mid to high-end wide receiver 2. At price where JSN is going right now, he's a smash.
Because he's going as the wide receiver 44 right now, or in the 40s. He's being drafted as a wide receiver 4, and he has wide receiver 2 upside. I don't think anybody who knows Jaxon Smith-Njigba as a talent would say that he has wide receiver 2 upside. This particular player is not a wide receiver, but I'd say he has wide receiver 1 upside because he's the wide receiver 1 in his offense, and that's Dalton Kincaid. If anybody, I don't know if you watched Dalton Kincaid at the end of last year, but he was straight up fun to watch. Yeah, at the beginning of the year, you're kind of balancing Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. They do different things in that offense. But last year at the end of the year, particularly in the playoffs, Dalton Kincaid really started to step it up. He started to get a higher percentage of snaps. He started to get a higher target share. And now Dalton Kincaid is in an offense where he is the wide receiver 1. I mean, last year it was 27.5% Stephon Diggs. Again, you follow the player, you follow the talent. Diggs was that talent, and he was that player. Kincaid was second last year as a freshman 15.7% target share. I would bet almost anything that number is going to go up by 6% or more. Almost anything I would bet that it's going to. And when you're talking about a tight ends, usually those thresholds that we mentioned are lowered. So like a tight end above 15% target share is usually producing at an elite level. And so usually guys like that are like Travis Kelce, where you're actually having to grab them at the end of the first, early second of your fantasy football draft.
Sam Laporta at 19% target share last year.
And Sam Laporta, even like when you look at where he's going in these drafts, he's going significantly higher than Dalton Kincaid is. I mean, heck, on ESPN, Sam Laporta is going in the second. And Dalton Kincaid is going in the 6th. On Underdog, he's going in the 5th. And Dalton Kincaid might
be the best tight end value at that price.
He is the best tight end value at that price.
Actually, and McBride.
Yeah, McBride's a really good one too.
McBride is a good one.
And again, like it's early and maybe their ADP will sort itself out. But Dalton Kincaid might have as much opportunity as any tight end in the NFL this year. On an offense where, I mean, they threw the ball last year 579 times. 579 times. Gabe Davis had 14% target share. James Cook was the next guy. So of the returning guys, I mean, you're talking about 40% of fantasy relevant targets last year are now off the team. And we have to always specify that just because the target's gone, just because the target share's gone, doesn't mean that the next player up is going to produce at that level. It is largely talent dependent. And I'm here to tell you, Dalton Kincaid is a big slot. He is as talented as it gets, and he is going to hit that threshold to where he's going to be hyper productive this year. He's one of the best values in fantasy football drafts at tight end like 5, 6, 7 a lot of times. Like, I mean, personally, when I'm looking at tight end rankings, like I would probably take him as my tight end 3.
Yes.
I would take him.
Yes.
I would not take him over Kelce, not take him over Laporta, but I'd consider it. Because again, I think even in Kelce's case, like Kelce is going to have targets that go to Hollywood Brown. He's going to have targets that go to Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice. Yes, Rashee Rice will probably play some this year. Sam Laporta has Amon-Ra St. Brown on his team, has Jahmyr Gibbs on his team, has David Montgomery on his team. And so when you're looking at those situations compared to Dalton Kincaid, who the second best guy is Keon Coleman, an unproven, raw, big wide receiver who they want, maybe they're not going to have him play slot. They're going to have him play X, and he's got questions at X, right? So, and then Khalil Shakir, who is a slot, but a slot that has very limited ceiling. Dalton Kincaid is going to get the ball so much. Like, Josh Allen picks his favorites. Josh Allen is used to a Stephon Diggs where he picks his favorites. Yeah. Kincaid is going to be his favorite. And if Kincaid can stay healthy, I mean, I could see him being a league winner at that price. I'm drafting him as much as I can. I usually don't like drafting tight end high, but Kincaid is somebody like 5th, 6th round. That'll do it for me.
Yeah, and he was a guy that was able to be productive last year without a lot of touchdowns. He had 2 touchdowns total on the year last year. And he was producing, he was putting up 12 plus points per game on the second half of the season consistently. And with him, like the only reason he's not going any higher is because of, like you said, Shakir and Coleman. And honestly, if I'm going to plant my flag anywhere, I'm going to plant my flag on the guy who actually consistently was productive, not just over a stretch last year, but like as a rookie for a significant stretch of the season, more than an undersized slot receiver in Khalil Shakir, more than an unproven, really raw rookie in Keon Coleman, who his route tree is not very diverse. That's literally the reason they drafted Kincaid. It was to compete with the Kelce's of the world. Seriously, like that's what he's going to be. And so then you're left with how much opportunity is Josh Allen going to provide? Well, the sky's the limit there. I don't think anyone's going to say that Josh Allen is going to throw the ball less because Gibbs and Davis are gone. So the next guy we're going to have here, and you might be surprised when you hear his name, is Josh Downs. So Josh Downs is a guy that you might not have expected going into this video. And honestly, I didn't really expect to have him in this video either. But when we were looking at the numbers and the opportunity share that he had as a rookie last year and the company that he was in, when he was playing alongside Michael Pittman, really, really led us to believe that he belongs here and is a really, really good dart throw towards the end of your fantasy drafts for sure. Because I mean, he costs you pennies. He costs you dang near nothing. But with a 17% target share last year in Indianapolis's offense, alongside Michael Pittman, who had elite top 4 target share in the NFL with 27%. Josh Downs, 17%. 17%, 98 targets.
As a rookie. Some of the guys that were comparable to him that year, Tank Dell, Rashee Rice, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, and Puka Nacua. Josh Downs is in the same company as Puka Nacua. Not from a target share perspective,
But from a one, from a one, oh,
He's like a vacuum cleaner.
right. But from a 100 club perspective, meaning Josh Downs had dang near 100 targets, he was in that same range as those other rookie wide receivers that are much, much, much more expensive than him. Yes, I understand he's the wide receiver 2 in his offense. Yes, I understand that the Colts just drafted A.D. Mitchell. I am here to tell you, we are Colts fans. We're really excited that the Colts drafted Adonai Mitchell.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting him to be super productive this year. I'm not. Especially after what Josh Downs did last year in the slot, even on the outside, like stuff that he could do downfield, his yak ability. I count on that in his sure hands more than I do on A.D. Mitchell and his weird route running. Like I trust that more. And look, the biggest argument against Josh Downs and maybe even against Michael Pittman in his current price is because Anthony Richardson is back and he's going to be the starting quarterback. And because of his rushing upside, he's not going to throw the ball as much as Minshew. Guys, let me tell you, I know it was a limited sample size last year, so I know it's a little bit faulty, but in the amount of time that Richardson was on the field last year, this is counting like half games and a couple full games, he averaged about 30 targets per game when you extrapolate some of his half games that he played. Like, he was throwing the ball just as much as Gardner Minshew was, and he will be able to provide plenty of volume for Josh Downs and Michael Pittman. Now, you definitely want to pump the brakes with the wide receiver 3 in that offense, which will definitely be one of Downs or Mitchell. So we could be wrong about our shot called on Josh Downs, and it could be Mitchell instead, but I'm telling you it's not going to be both. And I'm telling you that you should be taking your shot on the guy who's already proven to be productive in the NFL as a rookie and is in very rare company than someone who is unproven and yet to step on an NFL field.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And again, Josh Downs is a guy that you're getting him at wide receiver 60 prices right now. You're getting him in almost the 12th round. When you're looking at some of the other wide receiver 2s that are getting drafted in fantasy football, even starting up at the top, guys with other guys, Ayuk and Debo both going in the top 20 of wide receivers. DJ Moore could be a wide receiver 2. Mike Evans technically could as well. Jalen Waddle, wide receiver 2. Cooper Kupp is the wide receiver 2 in his offense. DK Metcalf could easily be, and sometimes is, the wide receiver 2 in his offense. Devonta Smith, wide receiver 2 in his offense. Keenan Allen, wide receiver 2 in his offense. T. Higgins, wide receiver 2 in his offense. I'm not even at 30 yet. And so you're talking about an Indianapolis Colts offense that I think everybody's just kind of assuming that, like, okay, they're not going to throw the ball, they're going to run a lot. It's Anthony Richardson, he's going to vulture touchdowns, blah, 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 blah. And when you're looking at where they fell last year in the pass attempts rankings, they were actually right there in the middle. Shane Steichen offense is not going to not pass the ball. Anthony Richardson, I mean, if they let Gardner Minshew...
quite the opposite.
It is like, quite the opposite.
Did you not just see what the Eagles did and what the jump that Jalen Hurts took as a passer?
The problem is they didn't see because they don't have any reason to watch the Colts. We do have a reason to watch the Colts.
They had a reason to watch the Eagles and still do, and that is thanks to Shane Steichen.
So again, with Josh Downs, like, he's a guy that had a good rookie year. I think everybody's just expecting to fall off because they drafted A.D. Mitchell, and I'm not exactly buying that. And then lastly, here we're going to have Jonathan Mingo. Jonathan Mingo last year, I mean, we were notably low on Jonathan Mingo. But to be fair, notably low in that entire offense last year because Frank Reich was the coach. Like, I cannot tell you. We lived the Frank Reich experience. You should trust us. Trust me about this.
Trust, please.
Jonathan Mingo in that offense had 85 targets. I honestly would have guessed like 40.
A lot of which was towards the end of the season. He started to really turn on some target share before he went down before he sat towards the end of the year. Right?
Again, it's a 15% target share. And yes, granted, there was nobody there hardly because Adam Thielen was there, and he was pretty much
23% of the target share there.
He was pretty much the guy. I mean, Adam Thielen was coming down off that portion of his career where he could actually get 25+% target share. But obviously Justin Jefferson, the tail end of his career in Minnesota, did not allow that to happen because Justin Jefferson's better. You saw him go here and he got to almost 24%. But Thielen naturally is probably going to start going down as he gets to 33, 34 years old this year. But Jonathan Mingo is a guy, him and Xavier Legette, you can take your shot on one of the two, similar to the Colts situation. Yeah. One of them is probably going to be 15 to 20% target share, probably 15 to 22% target share.
They're going to be the two in that offense because Deontay will be the clear one. Deontay is entering that offense, so he will be the clear one. But you really pick your shot of Mingo or Legette. Pick the inexperienced Legette, who was a 5th-year, 6-year senior or whatever, coming in as a 23-year-old. Jonathan Mingo, who already has a year in his belt with Bryce Young. Like, it is kind of take your shot here, and we'll be a little more lenient on who you decide to choose. But when you're looking at the club from a target perspective with the other rookies last year, he was in the same club as JSN, and we're advocating for JSN.
Again,
he was in the same club as Jaden Reed, and we're advocating for Jaden Reed.
That 80 to 100 targets threshold. And look at the team last year. Mingo at 15 was second. Chark at 11 was third. Hubbard at 7.5 was fourth. The non-fantasy relevant players on that team accounted for 44% of the target share. Not happening this year.
Again.
It's not happening. With the Dave Canales offense, I mean, even just looking at last year,
look
what
at
Tampa Bay did last year. It was Mike Evans, 23, almost 24%. Godwin, 23%. Rachaad White had 12.5%. That should tell you everything you need to know about Jonathan Brooks, by the way, moving
Side
forward.
note.
Everything you need to know. But that's a whole other video. And then the tight ends there, 11.9% of the targets, and then 28% was other. And you see it was more concentrated towards the top. And yes,
heavy.
Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are not equivalent to Jonathan Mingo and Xavier Legette. We know that, but the fact of the matter is Bryce Young is poised to take a pretty good step forward. And if you think that's true, which I am all 100% on that train. I think it's going to be night and day. One of those receivers has to produce, if not both of them to some extent. And I think Jonathan Mingo, having gotten more targets in his rookie year than I thought, and honestly, being a little bit more productive than I thought he was as well, I think I would bet on him to continue to take steps up and maybe work his way into like the wide receiver 3 range in fantasy. And again, with Jonathan Mingo, when you say, oh, yeah, wide receiver 3, that's not really doing anything for me. But when you're looking at where Jonathan Mingo is drafted, you have to go all the way down. All the way. My gosh. He is being drafted as the wide receiver 100.
So it's basically taking a dart throw out at the last round of your draft.
And
so
that's
what are you missing out on if he doesn't work out? You can just drop him and pick someone up off of waivers.
Yeah.
So
again,
that's the type of guy we're talking about.
These are guys that maybe they will, maybe they won't. We're not 100% sure. How can you say anything is 100% certain in fantasy? You literally cannot. But when you're looking at the numbers and you're looking at the team situation, these are guys that could be poised for a breakout this year. Do us a huge favor, drop a like on this video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And we would love to have you in the community. We're going to grow this channel as much as we can this year. But we appreciate you guys watching so much. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you later.